Right, the theme that is running through this bulletin tonight has been indeed the high cost of living, fuel subsidy removal, and of course, President Bola Tinubu's executive orders. Now, some economists have described the recent executive orders of the president as some sort of cost of living allowance. Tonight, our focus is on how much impact will these executive orders have on the rising price of goods and services across the country. Babajide Ogunso, founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's data consultant, is here to share insights. Great to have you again on the News at 10, Babajide.
Anthony, good evening.
All right. So, I see you having a lollipop with you. I don't know, perhaps has anything to do with what we're going to be talking about tonight. Well, is there any research, of course, or evidence that points to how much impact these recent executive orders of the president will have on slowing down the rising price of goods across the country?
So I'd like to start from a slightly different perspective. You see, lollipop tastes sweet, but it is not filling. That is how I'll summarize these executive orders. Like lollipop, it tastes sweet, but is it filling? No, it isn't. You know, the executive orders are meant to achieve three things. First, improve the ease of doing business. Second, one will reduce the rising price of alcoholic beverages. And thirdly, one of the executive orders as well is meant to reduce the rising price of telecommunication bills paid by consumers. But here are the facts, Ayotunde. I asked the National Bureau of Statistics, how much do Nigerians spend on alcohol? And they told me, Jide, on an average, for every 100 naira Nigerians spend, less than 1% goes on alcohol. Again, lollipop tastes sweet, but it's not filling. I then asked the National Bureau of Statistics, what about telecommunication services? How much do Nigerians spend on telecommunication services? The National Bureau of Statistics told me that on an average, for every 100 naira Nigerians spend, less than 5% goes to telecommunication services. Again, sweet, like lollipop, but these executive orders are not filling. And so the summary which I then asked was, where do Nigerians spend most of their money? Where will the impact of executive orders be felt? And the answer from the National Bureau of Statistics was that for every 100 naira Nigerians spend, 57% goes to food. In summary terms, more than half of every naira we spend goes to food. And so if we want executive orders to have the highest impact, we need to look at how do we significantly reduce the rising price of food. That is the fact. These executive orders of the president, like lollipop, ayo, sweet, but they don't fill you. And so what the president also needs to do is that we need to, similar to what we did to insecurity, declare a war on food insecurity. Because today, Nigeria is food insecure. And so what we've seen is rising price of food, and it has significantly reduced the quality of living for Nigerians. So if we want to improve the quality of living for Nigerians, apart from looking at these important issues, we need to keep our eyes on the urgent issues at hand.
So then, Babajide, I want to ask you, how easy is it for the government to really increase its revenue without increasing the tax burden on citizens? Because you've already talked about rising cost of food.
So we've had people discuss these issues in different ways. Some will say that Nigerians don't pay tax if you look at the tax revenue versus GDP. But I tell people that Nigerians pay a lot of tax. Let's not just look at that tax revenue relative to GDP. Let's look at inflation tax. Inflation is a tax. And if we take a look at how much Nigerians have paid on inflation tax, we will see that there are reasons to be bothered. Look at what happened between 1999 to 2006. On an average, in 1999, inflation rate was 22%. 2000, it went down 15%, went up in 2001, 16%. We see that as of 2003, under President Obasanjo, annual inflation rate was 24%. And the summary is that even though Obasanjo's inflation rates started at 22%, it ended at 9%. Some good news, a high and low swing. Between 2007 and 2010, inflation started at 7%, went high 15% a year after, went low 14%, went lower again 14%. So we summarize inflation rates, that inflation tax under Yar'Adua as a high-low swing. Under President Goodluck Jonathan, it started at 10%, went high to 12%, went low to 8%, and stayed at 8% as at the end of 2014. So again, under President Jonathan, it was a high-low swing. What about President Buhari? 2015, 10%. But you keep an eye on what happened since 2018. 11% a year after, 12% a year after, 16%, 16%, and it ended 21%. In summary terms, inflation under President Buhari started at 10%, and as at when he left office, 21%, more than double. Now, why is all of this important, Ayotunde? The summary of what we've seen in front of us tonight shows that between 1999 and the end of last year, Nigeria's cumulative inflation rate, 300%. That is inflation tax. In only 23 years, Nigeria's inflation over 300%. Most developed economies, it takes them a century for their cumulative inflation rate to hit 300%. And that has happened in Nigeria in just about 24 years ago. And so, yes, tax to GDP in Nigeria might look relatively low, but inflation has taxed Nigerians heavily. In summary, you'll be better off earning a 10,000 naira minimum wage in 1999 than earning 30,000 naira today.
Interesting. So what else can the government actually do, to significantly reduce the speed at which the prices of goods and services, are skyrocketing?
So a lot of people have talked about this thing. A lot of researchers have said in the short term, wages have the highest impact on inflation rates. In the medium term, it's money supply, and in the long term, it's population. But one thing the government hasn't kept its eyes on, it's the population, long term. Again, don't forget how we started. Lollipop tastes sweet, but it's not filling. Let's take a look at how much impact Nigeria's population is having on the rising price of goods and services. Because with rising population, the demand for goods and services will increase. Now let's focus a bit on what's in front of us. As at independence, the UK had a population of 52 million. Nigeria had a population then less than the UK, 45 million. Now look at what has happened between 1960 to 2022 in the UK. The UK's population has grown by 15 million, and most of that growth was even for migrants. Researchers show that about a third of that 50 million growth of the United Kingdom was from migrants. Look at Nigeria. Population in 1960, 45 million, now 210 million. Since independence, 165 million, approximately 165 million new births. South Africa has had huge population growth, but not as Nigeria, 16 million to 60 million, 45 million growth. Why is this important? With such population growth, the demand for limited goods and services are skyrocketing. Limited resources, yet people are demanding for these resources. And that in the long term is the reason why prices keep rising. So what the government needs to do is to look at issues of how to give people incentives if they do not contribute to such huge population growth. Being able to implement child limitation policy might be near impossible in North or Southern Nigeria, especially in Northern Nigeria. However, we need to understand that population growth has been the most significant reason why long-term inflation in Nigeria is yet to come down. And I know you're about to rush. Just before you go, remember, I've got this for you as well.
Oh, I have a lollipop.
It might not be filling.
It might not be filling, but
it's sweet. And that is what the executive orders really do. So
I will keep hope alive.
That is your executive order.
Thank you so much, Babajide Ogunsoro, for your analysis once again. Thank you so much.